You're having a good time on the couch with your friends. You're having a good time in the bed alone. You're having a good time watching TV. Let us ruin your day. Yay!
Welcome to Now It's Ruined, the podcast for people who hate enjoying things. I'm Kate Bridle.
And I'm Larkin Harrington.
And this is our 20th episode, which feels like a little bit of a landmark.
Yeah, when I was uploading this script, I was like, 20?
And 2 of those have been upcycled bonus episodes, but we still recorded them. They're still episodes that we took the time to research and record. So I think that's pretty cool. You might notice that I sound a little different, or maybe you haven't noticed at all, but I do, because I got a new mic. I took a chunk out of it with our patronage from Patreon. So thank you all so much. It is honestly life-changing because it's doing a bunch of work on the front end that now I don't have to do in editing. I should be sounding nice and sexy when I say things like succulent stock.
I knew it. I knew as soon as you opened your mouth.
So now I'm ready. I'm ready to live my true phone sex hotline / ASMR dreams. I don't have those dreams. I don't know why I called them dreams. Also, big thanks and shout out to Larkin's partner, Keegan, who is like our unpaid, unofficial sound engineer. He fixed an issue with static in Larkin's background, which was also driving me crazy during editing. So thanks to him, we should both sound just gorgeous.
Thank you, Keegan.
Okay, so speaking of upcycling, our next episode is actually going to be an upcycle. We're in housekeeping phase, by the way, housekeeping time. So yeah, our next episode is going to be an upcycle to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room so we can get you all the great holiday-themed stuff that we have planned. So on December 3rd, you will get a bonus episode about the Lindbergh baby kidnapping. And I was feeling kind of bad. I was like, oh no, we just upcycled, but we've made 8 new episodes since we upcycled last time. So I actually feel pretty good about that.
I was feeling a little guilty, so that makes me feel better.
Then we'll be back to ruin Christmas and New Year's. We did also put out some new bonus content for all our paid patrons, so including $3 and up. That came out last week when this is coming out, so go check that out. It's a bunch of bloopers and outtakes from our recent episodes. And today we have a new paid patron, so stay tuned for that shout out at the end of the episode. Final piece of housekeeping. We're trying to make a more concerted effort to put money in the Colin Hanks jar because we're concerned that otherwise it will never be full. So I have 3 quick Colin Hanks facts, 3 about things he enjoys. So Colin Hanks loves fall, tacos, and What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
I learned this all from the same article. It was like, what are some of the things keeping you sane right now? And he was like, fall and tacos and What We Do in the Shadows. So
you're like, those are all legitimate.
Also, when this comes out, it's only a few days before his birthday, which is November 24th. So happy early birthday to Colin Hanks. Also, just a plug for something he did recently. He directed a documentary about John Candy, which is on Prime now.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's called I Like Me.
I keep seeing it and being like, I'm not prepared emotionally.
I know. You know what? I'm going to put another quarter in for promoting. Colin Hanks should be giving me a quarter for promoting his.
That's correct.
Anyway, there we go. All right, well, with that, I'm going to hand things over to Larkin, who is here to ruin Thanksgiving for us with a tale of nutrition. That's all I know. That's literally all I know. So I'm going to stop talking and let her talk because I am in the dark again, and I'm really excited about it.
Fantastic. Yes, it is almost Thanksgiving time. A celebration wrought with unfortunate beginnings, misconstrued ideas surrounding family values, obligations, and what it means to be thankful for what we have. And certainly an appropriate time to talk about food. The good old pastime of the American Thanksgiving celebration has become a daunting prospect for so many, increasingly so as we become even more divided as a country, and this division reaches into our families. It feels like when we were growing up, there was always at least one uncomfortable family member, right? Like for most families, at least, I feel this is the case. And usually it's a distant or indirect relative like, oh, so-and-so's husband is going to be here this year. Not looking forward to that. Or maybe it's a super out of touch grandparent or uncle or cousin who says something racist or ignorant. We all had this mutual understanding as people that not everyone in a family is going to necessarily get along or maybe be on the same page about what's going on in the world. Now it seems family gatherings are just a time bomb for catastrophe. Anything is likely to set that bomb off. Emotional shrapnel just flying everywhere, taking out your sibling's eye.
Just the best intro to an episode about Thanksgiving that I could possibly imagine. Families are miserable. Everyone's divided. I hate the world. Let's go. Thanksgiving.
Let's go. I'm hungry. I'm preparing for procedure. I haven't eaten.
All Larkin can eat right now is broth, and I said I have some soup to eat in solidarity with her later. Or should I say, in liquidarity?
I'm so glad you said that on the recording. I was like, hoping you would, because it's genius and I hate it.
I was too proud of it. I texted it to her earlier, and she was like, God damn it. And I was like, I gotta bring it around on the recording. I'm so proud of myself.
It feels as though there's literally no safe topic. Everything is up for debate. Everyone just waiting to be on the defensive or the attack. Want to talk about the weather? That's safe enough, right? Well, Margaret, as well-intentioned as I'm sure you were about that, you have now set Cousin Jimothy off on a tangent about global warming, which is in turn sending Grandpa Jim, Jimothy's namesake, into fits. Without any safe topics left, these gatherings feel less and less like a way to get together with the people you love in order to celebrate each other and everything we are grateful for, and more like a forced attempt at it. An obligatory meeting that tests the limit of how much food and uncomfortable disagreement you can stomach before you give in to the inevitable heartburn and blowout. There is so much discourse surrounding this right now about how to get along with your family over the holidays and whether or not you should even try. I almost find it laughable if it wasn't so inherently sad and a bit scary as a reflection of what our country is devolving into. But in light of how this holiday came to be, what it was meant to represent, it is really a joke in and of itself and almost makes the near misery of what it has become even more of a joke to me. And I realize I have a seriously dark sense of humor born from immense anxiety about the history and fate of humanity. But I digress.
None of that was evident at all in that intro. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm so glad I flew under the radar with that. Let me give you some more ammunition for your arsenal to bring to your family Thanksgiving this year. We all know the story of the first Thanksgiving. A bunch of sweet little pilgrims in dumb little hats arrive in what is now America, are welcomed with open arms by a bunch of equally sweet and accommodating native peoples, and they all sit around a table and share in the bounty of their harvest and get along and have a great time. It's such a nice little story that is just so very convenient. The native people, conveniently tribeless, welcome the pilgrims with food and knowledge of the land and, conveniently, fade away to be not seen of or heard from again. This tale fits perfectly into the myth of a peaceful transition into colonialism and the myth of manifest destiny, which I discussed in my last episode about Jim Thorpe, and is essentially the very convenient ideology that it was the God-given right and destiny of colonial invaders to lay claim to the newly discovered America. Let's briefly unpack this convenient tale. These are very broad and broken down descriptions in these episodes. We gloss over a lot of things just to give you the basic story. Firstly, the insinuation here that the arrival of the Pilgrims in 1620 at Plymouth as the beginning of American history erases the presence of Native peoples here for thousands of years prior, at least 12,000 years, in fact. Secondly, those tribeless natives, they were of the Wampanoag Nation, or people of the First Light. There were 67 distinct tribal communities encompassed by the Wampanoag Nation, and its territory stretched from Massachusetts all the way to Rhode Island. And this was not the first time that they had encountered European invaders. The Wampanoag people had dealt with these invaders for a century by this time. Contact fraught with violence and death. By the time our Thanksgiving myth is said to be born, there would have been Wampanoag people who spoke English, and at this point, tribal leaders knew what the Europeans were up to. And while it is true that the Wampanoag reached out a hand to the Pilgrims in alliance, this was as a means of survival, and likely with a good amount of wariness and apprehension. Threatened by a deadly epidemic literally decimating their people, wonder whose fault that was.
Strange new diseases being introduced. From whence could that have come?
And the threat of rival tribes, including the Narragansetts. The sachem, or chief of the Wampanoag, strove to form an alliance with the invaders. An alliance that brought decades of more disease, exploitation, appropriation of tribal land, and massacre. Eventually, tensions built up enough to cause a war. Known as King Philip's War, or the First Indian War, the Great Narragansett War, or Metacom's Rebellion, it was a rebellion against the newly formed Confederation of Colonies called the New England Confederation, and is considered to be the bloodiest war per capita in the history of this country.
More than the Civil War.
Well, per capita, yeah.
Right, yeah. But I mean, even by any standard, because the Civil War was like ridiculously high death toll. So
Yeah.
that's crazy that anything could beat it on any metric, to be honest.
Agreed. Like, I read that and was
Wow.
like, take that again? In 1675, incensed by the execution of 3 Wampanoag men who had been accused of murdering a Christian Indian man, the chief of the Wampanoag, Metacom, had had enough. Later to be known as Philip, or King Philip, as many Wampanoag people took on British or Christian names, Chief Metacom was the son of the chief who had negotiated a peace treaty with the colonists of Plymouth, Chief Massasoit, a treaty that was not honored by the colonists. This instigated the colonists to send their military to destroy Metacom's village, and thus began King Philip's War. Over the course of 14 bloody months, the Wampanoag, alongside other allied nations, fought a series of horrific battles. During the Great Swamp Fight in December of 1675, an estimated 300 American Indians died, either from the fighting or by exposure or by being burned alive.
Oh, God. I was going to say, like, December in a swamp sounds horrifically cold in the areas
Yeah, and
that
wet.
this would be. That's not going to be good for you.
Mm-mm. Nor is being burned alive.
No.
And it was Josiah Winslow. Josiah, good old Josiah. Kate, I hope you're keeping a full tally of my afterlife enemies. The list is stacking.
I need to go back and write them down, actually.
I should have made a document.
Maybe we can make notepads someday if we ever can make merch. Like a notepad that's like, this is my list of people I'm going to fight in a Denny's parking lot in hell.
And then it's a great conversation starter. Like, what's your Denny's parking lot list?
What's your top five Denny's parking lot in hell list? No, that's not snappy enough. We'll figure it out. We'll brand it better.
Will is listening and we'll figure it out.
Will will help us. Yeah, Will will help us brand it.
Anyway, Josiah, now on the list, he was the governor of Plymouth Colony. He led colonist militia in an attack of a huge fortification of Wampanoag and Narragansett. Women and children were not spared. The previously neutral Narragansett and their chief Canonchet were now a part of King Philip's fight. But in a turning point for the English, Chief Canonchet was captured in April of 1676 and was summarily shot, beheaded, then drawn and quartered.
Why?
Yep.
Why? All of it. Why? All those things? Just indignity. Like that's
It's
all
indignity,
that's for, is to
and
humiliate
desecration
someone's
of,
corpse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is, I'm sure they knew, extremely emotionally harmful because those
Right.
remains are very important
Yeah.
spiritually.
It's just a fuck you to you and your beliefs, and to make you, I mean, there are so many systems of belief that value, the person being whole and
Yes.
believe that they can't find rest without that, and they had to fucking know that. Ugh, just
They
that's
had to.
disgusting.
They did. So the Narragansett, now leaderless, were seriously weakened along with the remainder of King Philip's allies. Many began to surrender, and some were even given amnesty, only to be sold into slavery.
I knew it. I was like, amnesty. That can't be the end of that sentence.
Nope. Sure isn't.
Not on this podcast.
Nope.
Amnesty will never be the end of the sentence.
On this podcast, amnesty will never be the end of the sentence. So August 1676, King Philip was shot and killed by John Alderman, an English Indian soldier. Philip was posthumously hung, beheaded, drawn, and quartered. And for 2 decades, his head remained as a display on a spike at Plymouth.
Ugh. For 2 decades, too. Like,
2
eventually,
decades.
I guess it was just a skull.
The low,
Disrespect.
the lowest of the low. Disrespect, yeah.
I don't know why that's really getting me right now. It just feels so targeted.
There's no civility. There's no trust. There's no truth. Ugh. And there's no
Yeah.
honor. There's no honor in beheading and quartering your enemy and then putting his body on display for his children and people to see for decades. You heinous piece of shit.
Yeah, just, people doing whatever they think they need to do because they believe that they have a right to do it, which is ridiculous. But even if you do think you have the right to this land and this area, like, why do you have to take it to then that extra level of like just absolute desecration and humiliation and trauma,
Because God told you so, is the answer.
Yeah, but does that like is it that? Is it like you're entitled to have everything and you as long as you're producing, you are one of the chosen ones and whatever, like be productive. And by the way, do it in as brutal a way as possible? Or is it like I
Yeah.
feel like some people are just taking the directive there to be not some people, a lot of people
Right.
like, well, I have the God-given right, which means not only do I have the right to this land and to murder these people, but I have the right to do it in whatever most horrendous way I can think of.
What happened to you? Why are you this way?
Right, exactly. Like, what's your deal? What's your trauma that like you feel
Yeah.
the need to go to this extreme in this circumstance? Ugh. We're just getting started, and I'm
Such a delightful episode.
already
y'all.
mad.
So, going back in time just a little bit to the tale of Tisquantum, or Squanto, the unfortunate nickname bequeathed upon him. His is the tale of the friendly guy who helped the pilgrims survive when they arrived, very prepared, with literally no food, livestock, or literally anything. Useless, dumb assholes.
Did they try to bring livestock and they died, or did they? Because I know that happens sometimes, but like or they didn't even.
I don't think they even tried. I don't think they were expecting to hit Massachusetts. They went off course, and I think they were expecting at least some presence of people who had stuff already. But the neat little story of Squanto we were fed is actually prepare your butts. Not so neat. Tisquantum was Patuxet, a tribe of the Wampanoag, and he was tricked onto a British ship intended for Spain to be sold into slavery years before the aforementioned idiots arrived on the Mayflower. He escaped the fate of slavery, however, with the help of some Catholic friars, and made it to London. Through various connections, Tisquantum was finally able to board a ship bound for Patuxet after 5 years away from his home. He was one of the infinitesimal few of the nearly 5 million Indigenous Americans kidnapped and forced into slavery who were able to make it home. According to historians, only 2 Wampanoag ever made it back from that slave ship, and Tisquantum was one of them. It was not a joyous or pleasant return. The epidemic I mentioned earlier, later to be referred to as the Great Dying, a plague brought by European traders, had taken the lives of roughly 50,000, 2/3 of the tribal population along the coast, which is another horrific tragedy that the colonizers took as a sign of manifest destiny.
Oh, so they were like, they died en masse out of nowhere from this disease that doesn't kill us. So obviously inferior. God. If you are someone present day who seizes on any opportunity to find another person inferior based on whatever it may be, just look in the mirror and go to fucking therapy. Because
Please.
None of us are born inherently better or worse than anybody else.
I'm in agreement. Tisquantum came home to find his people decimated. Quite literally, all that was left was a pile of bones. No one was left in his village. Over the course of his nightmarish travels, Tisquantum learned English, which made him an incredible asset to both the Wampanoag and to the Pilgrims. He was indispensable in the formation of treaties between them, and he tended to favor the English, as he did not want to be a servant of Chief Massasoit for the rest of his life, and at times the English offered him protection from his own people. So he helped them survive, teaching them how to grow food and where and how to fish and hunt, and they likely would not have survived without that help. They almost all starved that first winter because they were dumb and stupid and barely made it through the second. Of course, the Pilgrims used that hard-won treaty to their advantage and as a means of oppression. And Tisquantum was thanked for his efforts by getting killed because of the Pilgrims' misuse of their power, likely at the hands of his own people. But huzzah! The Pilgrims lived through their second winter, and the accounting is that in celebration of a successful harvest, they all shot their guns into the air.
Why? I just don't get it. Okay. Waste the ammo while you're at it. No wonder you fucking starving. You wasting all your ammo firing into the air. You could have used that to hunt. Whatever.
And this alarmed the Wampanoag, who, as allies of the Pilgrims, thought there was fighting underway and rushed over to their aid. The dum-dum idiot Pilgrims were like, oopsie, sorry about that. Let's have a feast, maybe? And the Wampanoag, realizing nothing was actually happening, the weird white people were just being weird and white again, contributed 5 deer for the celebration. This is the feast referenced as the first Thanksgiving. But There were other feasts that took place, namely one that took place in 1637 as a celebration of the death of 600 Pequot in a massacre that took only an hour, dubbed the Mystic Massacre. So Thanksgiving is likely a conflation of several different feasts and celebrations like it. And while harvest ceremonies and celebrations were a part of life for the Wampanoag, as with other Native nations, giving thanks is an intrinsic spiritual and cultural part of life, daily and seasonally. Giving thanks for a good harvest, for an animal life taken. There is the Wampanoag Cranberry Thanksgiving and Strawberry Thanksgiving, and the Green Corn Thanksgiving celebrated by some southern tribes. Thanksgivings that predate the arrival of Europeans by hundreds, if not thousands of years. Thanksgiving for the English came after massacres and surviving against all odds, no real thanks given to their unimaginably charitable hosts.
Wow. So this is something I never really registered or didn't know, is that like that act of giving thanks is appropriated basically from Native people versus
Right.
an inherent. Wow.
And it keeps going. The Thanksgiving that we know didn't even exist until 1863, when it was declared an official holiday by Abraham Lincoln. The descendants of the Plymouth Pilgrims had been whining about no one paying attention to them and wanted to instill in everyone that they were the ones who made America. We're relevant. We had the first Thanksgiving, you guys. The Pilgrims are the fathers of America. With all this whining and eventually a publication by Reverend Alexander Young that included a brief mention saying, quote, "This was the first Thanksgiving, the great festival of New England," end quote. The idea began to stick. What we know or pretend to know about the Pilgrims at Plymouth and other settlers has been taken from the words of Plymouth's first governor, William Bradford, whose journal was discovered in the late 1800s. It was discovered by an editor named Sarah Josepha Hale. Josepha. And she was really, really into the first Thanksgiving idea. So much so that she campaigned hard for it to be made an official holiday. It took 5 presidents ignoring her before Abraham Lincoln was like, fine, Jesus, it's Civil War times now anyway. So yeah, sure, everyone get along and celebrate Thanksgiving. It's on the last Thursday of November. God.
If this is what you need to get through the fucking Civil War, then go for it. I have bigger problems.
But Franklin D. Roosevelt was like, actually, sometimes there's a 5th Thursday in November, and these dummies might get it confused. So let's make it the 4th Thursday. So he did that in 1941. And it worked out to make the holiday season even longer, which means more shopping. Yay, the economy. Yay, consumerism. Yay, Black Friday. So basically, Thanksgiving is a lie sold to us as placating propaganda. Our ancestors literally stepped over the bones of the people who had lived here for thousands of years and said, "Thanks for the land, white God. Don't mind if I do. Go trample each other over a new TV." Now, why do we eat turkey for Thanksgiving? There is really no evidence that it was present at the feast used as reference for the first Thanksgiving. There was definitely fish and venison, along with cranberries and pumpkin and other vegetables, certainly corn. And maybe there was fowl present, but it's more likely it would have been waterfowl. Bird lady, would you like to name some waterfowl for the class?
Geese, ducks.
Yeah.
Just broadly, or would you like me to get
No,
more
those
specific?
they were thinking
Seagulls.
along those lines. Seagulls, yeah. Shooting seagulls over the side. Yeah, they were thinking ducks, geese. While wild turkeys were definitely present in North America by that time, they likely would not have been a staple for the Pilgrims yet. But don't worry. Here comes Sarah Josepha Hale again. Apparently, she was dubbed the Mother of Thanksgiving, in very much the style of our friend, enemy, Bernays. Over the course of her deranged fight for Thanksgiving, Hale used her platform as the editor of a popular magazine, Godey's Ladies Book, to spread the word. In her vision of the perfect Thanksgiving, reimagined from Bradford's text, turkey was at the center, simply a must. Along with everything else, because apparently, according to Josepha, at Thanksgiving, you eat everything that was once alive and put it on the table.
Do we know why she fixated on turkey? Did she just really like turkey?
I don't know. I don't
She
know.
was like, this is my holiday. I'm the mother of Thanksgiving, and my favorite thing
mother-
is turkey. So that's what we're fucking eating.
Maybe she got it misconstrued. Maybe she was like, she assumed that the big birds in that area at the time were turkeys, and they feed a lot of people. They certainly do. They're big. But she was into it, and she wanted to make sure everyone else was as well. So that's why we eat turkey for Thanksgiving.
Just propaganda from a random lady who was the editor of a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Bernays!
Bernays!
Free Bernays. Sarah walked so Edward Bernays could run.
God. I wish she had tripped and fallen. Anyways. Speaking of, let's talk nutrition. As a science, nutrition is a relatively young area of research. The first vitamin wasn't even discovered, or in other words, defined, until 1926. And that was the beginning of the basis of nutritional study, the vitamin, or organic stuff we need to survive, but that our body doesn't produce on its own, so is something we need to consume.
What vitamin was it? Sorry, do you know which vitamin it was?
It was thiamine.
Thiamine. Oh, okay.
Thiamine.
Not one I would have pulled out, so.
Thiamine, yes, the first vitamin defined. The word vitamin was given to us by Casimir Funk.
Oh, I like that one.
I like Casimir
Funk. That is a great name. That's going on
It really
the
is.
list.
Casimir Funk was a Polish biochemist who thought up the concept of a vital amine. An amine being, and I am paraphrasing this definition from both Britannica and the National Institutes of Health, a nitrogen-based organic substance that is essential for life. Makes sense?
Okay.
We can follow this. Vital, amine, vitamine. Also vita in the Latin meaning life.
Oh, yeah.
We can put it all together.
Oh, that's so cool. The origin of that word. I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Vita, I mean. More specifically, this area of study came about based on the theory that deficiencies of these important substances was the cause of many diseases that were a real problem at the time, like scurvy and rickets. In other words, caused by a lack of something necessary to prevent them. Based on observations of chickens that appeared to be protected from disease when given the right food, Funk coined the new term and paved the way for the discovery and isolation of all the major vitamins. This meant that these deficiency diseases could be treated and prevented with diet. A great example being the treatment and prevention of scurvy with the use of citrus, which contains vitamin C. This was definitively proven only in 1932, which seems late to me.
Yeah, because I guess maybe they just knew it kind of like anecdotally. They were like, our sailors who eat a bunch of oranges are feeling better, like, because they were using citrus against scurvy like earlier than that, right?
Oh, yeah, like more than a century. We now fortify staple foods with essential vitamins and minerals like calcium and iron. These discoveries and a newfound widespread concern for preventing nutrient deficiencies led to the first iterations of government-commissioned research into nutrition requirements and presented to the masses as recommended dietary allowances, or RDAs. This was very much instigated by the Great Depression and World War II, when concerns about food shortages and the threat of deficiency disease were ramping up. So much so that here in the US, the government whipped itself up into a near frenzy over the study of nutrition. The Great Depression had weakened our fighting force, as a large portion of young men were malnourished or dealing with nutrient deficiency. Up to 1 in 9 potential draftees were rejected because of this.
Wow.
Yeah. The solution, pump them full of vitamins and minerals, produce as much propaganda about diet and nutrition as possible, insinuate that American women need to know the best, most nutritious recipes in order to bolster our men, our future soldiers, without much concern offered for women themselves, of course, because what use are they?
Give your men all the nutritious stuff and don't eat that piece of cake. You pick up a Lucky Strike cigarette instead and you smoke that.
Exactly. And stay home about it. It can be argued that the results of this wartime depiction of optimal diet has left a legacy of incomplete understanding of what a truly balanced, healthy diet looks like for every person. It lacks nuance and has been solidified in the scientific discourse and appears in the dark world of diet culture. Hannah LeBlanc of Stanford did her dissertation on this, and her research highlights the overlooked and long-standing influence the U.S. military has had on our society, namely on what we have come to believe about physiology and diet. An early focus on masculinity, exercise culture, and how to make a really strong man for a short time has maybe warped our idea of what health in the long term really looks like. LeBlanc's research also reveals our government and military connecting food insecurity with the threat of communism. So at home and abroad, the threat of hungry people with weakened minds that might fall prey to communism became a real problem. So to protect democracy, cough, cough, capitalism, our government formed the International Committee on Nutrition for National Defense, which is just wild to me.
Nutrition for national defense. Wow, this is crazy. I did not know any of this, like the military. Wow.
I didn't either. LeBlanc's research also highlights how nutrition has historically been politically inflected, and it has stayed that way. Next in this new era of nutritional study was a focus on the effects of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and sugar. Early studies on the benefits or harmful effects of how many carbs, sugars, etc. we consume were super controversial. But it became widely accepted that a major contributor to heart disease is fat. But other research at the same time implicated excess sugar as the main culprit. It was ultimately fat that won, politically and scientifically. In 1977, a U.S. Senate committee report, Dietary Goals for the United States, advised that a diet of low fat and low cholesterol was ideal for everyone. These arguments remained controversial as scientific evidence evolved along with the influence of the food industry, Bernays. It changes so much, and it's the government and the industry that tells us what we should be eating.
Yep.
And it's always changing, and we can't keep up. More importantly, the arguments surrounding the effects of fat and sugar on diet health were based on the nutritional model developed around deficiency diseases. This model focuses on one nutrient and its effects on preventing disease. That's far too simplistic a model. So now we know that there are certain micronutrients and foods humans need in order to be optimally nourished, healthy, and not diseased. We're enriching staple foods around the world, trying to tackle worldwide malnourishment, incentivizing mass production of staple crops. The industry is going crazy trying to keep up with the diet argument, and no one can agree on how much fat we should actually be eating. But then the issue of ethics surrounding this research enters the chat. It wasn't until the nightmarish acts of Nazi doctors during World War II did we really start to have a conversation about medical ethics. In 1946, 23 of these so-called doctors were put on trial in Nuremberg for the atrocities they committed against human beings, and it resulted in the Nuremberg Code of Medical Ethics. The code defines moral and legitimate medical research with 10 distinct points. Briefly and very simplified, they are: 1. A subject must ably and willingly consent to any experiment. 2. An experiment must be for the good of society. 3. It has to have been tested on animals first. 4. It should avoid any unnecessary mental or physical suffering. 5. No experiment should be conducted if injury, disability, or death is likely. And this one, maybe you can help me with, Kate, because there's a footnote that I don't quite understand. And it's, quote, except perhaps in those experiments where the experimental physicians also serve as subjects.
Oh, so you can experiment on yourself.
Ah.
If you want. You were assuming the risk and you're doing it to yourself. That's how I would interpret that.
I mean, that's kind of what I thought, but I was like, Kate has lawyer brain. She'll
and it's funny, my lawyer brain has been going with all of these where I'm like, that's ambiguous, that's ambiguous, that's ambiguous. What does likely mean? Define benefit society, like in what?
All right, and we're at 6. The risk of the experiment should not be greater than how important the results would be for humanity.
Who's making that judgment call?
Who's making that judgment? 7, preparations and facilities must be provided that prevent injury, disability, or death. 8, an experiment should only be conducted by scientifically qualified people.
Okay, that's a big one.
9, the subject of an experiment must be able to end the experiment at any time for any reason. 10, the scientist conducting the experiment must be ready to stop the experiment if at any time it seems like injury, disability, or death of a subject is likely.
Again, what's likely? That's the big one for me.
Well, I mean, they do. Like I said, I simplified them a lot. There is more language in those
more
that
definition.
is like, more definition of saying, words like to the best of the experimenter's ability and moral understanding, blah, blah, blah.
A lot of discretion in there. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
A lot of personal discretion. Yeah.
Yes. But again, it's like a time, this horrible thing has happened, but it's still a time of like, we expect people not to do that.
Yeah.
We expect you to just understand what a moral choice is. Malnutrition was, as we are all very aware, a horrifically pervasive part of World War II. For me and probably many others, World War II is simply an image of a malnourished, starving person. Like, that is how that era is represented in my mind. Any war or societal unrest is likely to involve or inadvertently cause food insecurity, malnutrition, and even starvation. But it has also been used as a tactic of war since war has been a thing. Hunger can be a very powerful weapon. In fact, it was a fundamental strategy at the heart of the Nazi regime. Hitler knew that the failure to control food supplies was what doomed the Germans in the First World War, and he was not going to repeat this mistake. The Nazis seized control of Soviet land and food supplies and began strategically rationing food to the local populations and withholding the most from those deemed racially inferior. In essence, it was a genocide through starvation of over 7 million civilians, which was dubbed Der Hungerplan. And this weaponized starvation we are well familiar with as a part of life in the Jewish ghettos and especially in the camps, where hunger was an ever-present, deliberate evil mechanism. There was a widely spread propagandist lie of a quote-unquote food plan supposedly implemented in the camps and advertised as a way to make the camps look less like the nightmarish hells that they actually were. It was laid out that there were to be 3 meals, quote-unquote, a day.
Mm-hmm.
Breakfast was to be a sugarless coffee-like substance, lunch a soup of roots and grains, and dinner 300 grams of bread to be served with either meat, butter substitute, cheese, or jam. And I say meant to be because there is no evidence at all that such a plan was ever implemented in any of these camps. Maybe prisoners would receive a ration of margarine, but mostly the ever-present black coffee water. But there was an experiment underway at the same time going on in the US, one that followed the Nuremberg Code, as far as I can tell, where people were starving. A good number of conscientious objectors, young men who refused to fight in the war for moral or religious reasons, wanted to do something, anything, to help. So in 1944, 36 of these men signed up to be voluntarily starved. People were starving all across Europe because of this war, and our military wanted to know how to safely get them refed. So the University of Minnesota conducted a medical experiment, starving the men over the course of 6 months. They were allotted around 1,800 calories of food a day, and then it required to exercise more than that allotment away. Participants lost around 25% of their body weight, becoming quickly emaciated. Many became anemic, depressed, and apathetic, psychological effects that remained well after the experiment was over. Fortunately, the camps began to be liberated one by one at this time. Unfortunately, this meant an overwhelming number of starving people that needed help, and the results of the experiment were a little too little, a little too late. Masses of emaciated people were being rescued, but not from the threat of death by slowly starving. The experiment is still cited and resulted in a guidebook that was released in 1946 called Men and Hunger to be used by aid workers. The BBC article on this experiment listed some of the samples of the advice given in the book, and these 2 stood out to me. One is, quote, show no partiality and refrain from arguments. The starving are ready to argue on little provocation, but they usually regret it immediately.
I'm just thinking of you right now when you're
in my starvation, my hangry state.
The whole intro of this is evidence, I think, of that being pretty true. The starving.
Pretty true. But I mean,
you're not actually starving, obviously.
Right. And I didn't regret it.
Yeah.
And the second one, quote, a thoughtful worker will make use of the fact that the starving are emotionally affected by the weather. Some special and cheerful activities might be saved for bad days.
Interesting. I'm curious what basis they had for like that they're like particularly affected by the weather.
The anecdotes of the men in the experiment were like mostly apathy. When you're trying not to think about food and you're hungry, you just are listless and tired and you have no joy left. There was also an anecdote that I don't really understand. One of the participants, a Quaker, he, had his little sack of, minimally maybe 600 calories or something for his dinner. And he wanted to take his girlfriend out to dinner to watch her eat because he thought that would be nice for him, I guess. He was like, I took my lady out for a really nice dinner and it was a total waste of money and time because she couldn't eat in front of me. And I was like, I wouldn't be able to eat in front of you.
Yeah, dude. It should be like, I feel way too bad I mean, I say that. I probably would. I probably would be like, all right, dude, this is your choice.
Your
If you want to
choice.
buy me a nice dinner and watch me eat it, let's go.
The subjects of this experiment were slowly fed back to health, with differing foods and caloric allotments given to different groups. But full recovery, particularly psychologically, took months, if not years for some. All this is to say that malnutrition at its extreme has a much greater impact on the human body and mind than we really truly acknowledge. And this leads to the real meat of what I wanted to talk about today. And I reread that when I was editing this, and I was like, Larkin, what did you just do? Did you just do a food pun? I hate you so much. And I kept
I
it.
was going to say, was that intended?
Kept intentionally, not written intentionally. I was
That's
like,
amazing.
Larkin, sticking to the same time period, let's hop over to Canada. As we have been discussing, food insecurity is a pressing topic worldwide. Conversations and debates are raging about nutrition, the fledgling science surrounding vitamins and minerals, caloric requirements, etc. There are still a lot of questions surrounding dietary needs, and a certain Canadian biochemist and medical doctor, Lionel Pett, wants answers. Add him to the list.
A witch list. The great names or the fight in a Denny's in hell?
Fight in a Denny's.
Okay. Denny's parking lot or in the Denny's. I feel like you can do either way.
Let's go outside, Pett.
Yeah, it starts in the Denny's and then you're like,
Starts in, yeah.
outside, you and me.
Yeah, it works its way out. Pett was the head of the Nutrition Service Division of the Canadian government. Established in 1941, this division, under Pett's leadership, set out to establish nutrition standards and policies for the country. But, as I mentioned, there was still controversy about how to determine this. More study and experimentation was needed, which was a difficult feat, seeing how you would need a study group comprised of a lot of hungry people. Fortunately for Pett, there existed an extremely large, vulnerable, and overlooked group of humans at that time that were set up perfectly to be experimented on. Pett picked up on talk that there was a problem of malnutrition and hunger pervasive across Indigenous communities and in, yes, the Canadian residential schools.
That's what I was thinking. God fucking damn it. That's immediately where my brain went. And I was like, if it's fucking...
In my last episode, I went into detail about the horror that was the American Indian boarding school and their counterparts, the residential schools of Canada. Take a pause here and go have a listen if you want something to feel nauseated about. Something else to feel
Yeah, I was going to
nauseated
say
about, I should
something
say.
further.
But very briefly, these were far from what could be called schools. More like prison training camps, these were institutions of violence and abuse where stolen Indigenous children were stripped of their culture and identity, and where many children lost their lives. Illness and disease was rampant at these facilities, along with pervasive hunger and malnourishment. And this was something that Indigenous communities had been trying to get the government to pay attention to for a while. Like, yes, hello, our kids are malnourished and are being starved in your schools, and our communities are malnourished and we're starving because of your policies. Ugh. The government eventually relented, and researchers were sent into the schools to verify these cases of hunger. Like, okay, sure, we'll go check it out.
Yeah, we don't take your word for it. Yeah.
These researchers were met with numerous cases of malnutrition, many of which were considered to be severe. And it was definitely much worse than the inspectors would have even realized, because the schools would get a heads up about when the inspectors would be coming by. The food would be bulked up, real butter would be served, everything made to look like the children were getting fed adequately. And the school principals would complain about these investigations, making their lives harder. So instead of seeing starving children and immediately killing every adult present and burning everything to the ground and getting them food and health care, what did the Canadian government do? They took what they saw as an opportunity. Between the years 1942 and 1952, a decade, Indigenous communities were subjected to nutrition experiments. And for 5 of these years, almost 1,000 Indigenous children over 6 different residential schools were subjected to them as well. They were overseen by Pett, carried out by the Department of Indian Affairs of Canada under the direction of physicians Dr. Percy Moore, the Indian Affairs Branch Superintendent of Medical Services, and Dr. Frederick Tisdall, well-known nutritionist and former president of the Canadian Pediatric Society and one of 3 pediatricians at the Hospital for Sick Children. And at no point was consent obtained from any of the children or any of the children's parents who weren't even informed of the experiments at all.
Of course.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, and but of course.
We have historian Ian Mosby to thank for bringing these experiments to light in 2013. After discovering,
I was like in 1970 something? No, 2013.
No, 2013. after discovering the shocking federal documents and publishing an article titled Administering Colonial Science. He found about 900 documents and was like, I'm sure there are more.
Oh, yeah. So the Canadian government had to have that shit locked down. They were like, yeah, we know this exists. We're not going to talk about it. No one seems to be bringing it up or looking into it. So we're just
nobody.
Leave that alone.
We'll just leave that in the basement. And Mosby found it. He lays out the methods and experiments implemented on helpless children and unwitting communities. Already malnourished children were kept that way in order to create control groups. In one case, a treatment group was given an experimental and controversial flour containing bone meal, thiamine, riboflavin?
Other way around. It's okay.
All right. Riboflavin and niacin. Instead of improving, the children worsened, becoming more anemic. At the time, there was a national debate over whether or not to legalize this fortified flour. In another experiment, the treatment group received riboflavin, thiamine, and/or absorbic acid supplements in order to see if this improved the effects of malnourishment, which they didn't. At a school in Port Alberni, British Columbia, children were rationed only 8 ounces of milk per day, the recommended amount at the time being more than twice that amount. Baseline data was collected for 2 years on children under the 8-ounce policy before it was increased to 24 ounces in order to study the effects of tripling the recommended amount.
Just out of nowhere. So you've been only on 8 and now it's 24.
Now it's 24.
So let's see if that messes you up. Jesus.
They were prevented from receiving dental care, as studying dental disease was considered important information. Many children would die as a result of these experiments. And when was it again that the Nuremberg trials were making a code? Was it right now? Was it right now that this was happening?
Was it right in this moment that we were horrified by Nazi doctors doing not dissimilar shit?
These experiments were being conducted under the influence of the largely accepted belief held by scientists and bureaucrats that there was something inherently wrong with Indigenous people genetically. And that was what was causing problems with nutrition within those communities. According to Mosby, quote, they took the extremely racist idea that Indigenous peoples were somehow racially inferior, and they suggested that might have had to do with nutrition. And so they took it upon themselves to solve this Indian problem through expert intervention into Indigenous people's diets, end quote. At the heart of this, yes.
Nope. I had something and then it fell out because I just got so mad. My brain just worked itself into a swarm of bees and I can't. Problems we've created that then we're saying are inherent. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yes, exactly. Because at the heart, right, of this absurd line of thinking was, of course, the outright refusal to acknowledge the true cause of this epidemic of malnourishment, a forced change in diet through displacement, strict regulations placed on hunting and other means of obtaining traditional food sources, livelihoods destroyed, the implementation of boarding schools, in short, colonialism, and nothing was learned from any of this that would positively affect Native populations. Basically, the researchers were like, well, we don't really know how to fix this. Maybe they should be growing food and hunting and fishing and stuff. Maybe don't be so reliant on storable foods. Oh, you mean the store foods that you force them to transition to? I will kill you and your whole family and all of your ancestors. Are you fucking kidding me?
It's going to be a big brawl in the parking lot of the Denny's in hell. That is exactly what made my brain spin out. It was like, are you?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I was like, did I even hear that right? That they are now saying, oh, wow. I always think of the Taino and the hammocks. Columbus and the Spanish were like, stop farming, get us gold, and we're going to chop your hands off. And then they were like, never mind, farm again. And they were like, are you fucking kidding me?
What is wrong with your brains?
Turns out you don't have gold. Yeah, that's what we fucking told you. I just spilled kombucha on my mouse pad.
No.
God, I have nothing. For one feral moment, I was like, just lick it. Okay. I did not lick my mouse pad. I did not lick kombucha off my mouse pad. This is how much of in a tizzy I am right now. I'm so mad. I was just like, you spilled kombucha. No, you got to keep powering through. Just lick it. All right.
Pett's experiments were all as a means of engineering Canada's food guide, and he left behind a legacy of continued suffering over generations. The survivors of these experiments were left with long-term effects on their health, which were passed down to their children. An article looking at these long-term health effects, co-authored by Mosby, our guy, looks at the higher incidence of type 2 diabetes as a result of prolonged hunger in Indigenous populations, along with obesity and a range of other health issues that disproportionately affect Indigenous peoples of Canada. As opposed to the argument that there is a genetic basis for this, Mosby claims, quote, "In fact, the susceptibility is Canadian colonialism and Canadian colonial policy." And LeBlanc, who I mentioned earlier, the Stanford lady, she also talks about this, pointing out that in our hysteria over a supposed obesity epidemic, we have lost sight of the fact that obesity and food insecurity are undeniably connected, along with racial and economic inequality, which are also undeniable factors.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm thinking of a couple of things, but it's like, those kids who were experimented on, and like, if you're food insecure and you are starving as a kid, your metabolism is going to be all out of whack. Or as an adult, I'm sure it throws everything off. Your metabolism is all fucked up. And then if you were also like, you were food insecure, your ability to control your eating habits is probably also fucked up.
Exactly. Like your psychological approach to food and how your body reacts to food.
You're physically and psychologically messed up with your relationship with food. Oh my God. Yep.
So the conclusion for me is that the problems surrounding food insecurity and malnutrition are not going to go away anytime soon. If we can continue to take advantage of marginalized groups of people whose voices are never listened to, if we refuse to learn from our mistakes, if we decide to hold on desperately to what we now know to be only a disjointed and strategically devised image of what nutrition really is, people will continue to go hungry and people will continue to be unhealthy. We have hyperfixated on the wrong areas of study. What about our microbiome? What about balance? What about women's bodies? What about eons of historically eating with the seasons? And how does that affect us? Like many things, it feels like we are slowly navigating our way out of a cave of misinformation and misdirection born from propaganda. We're blinking our little cave eyeballs in the sun and trying to reimagine what was missed with all that redirection. And I couldn't stop thinking about Hannah LeBlanc's research and the glaringly obvious statement that nutrition is always politically inflected. Maybe it's time to get politics out of our food. But I don't know how we will be able to achieve that when politics and consumerism are so inextricably intertwined. On that note, I encourage us all to take another look at our Thanksgiving celebrations this year. This time, right now, is completely inundated with excess. So much food you don't know what to do with, so much spending and waste. And in light of people's food benefits getting snatched away from them this year, maybe we can consider some alternatives. Maybe share your food with the people in your community who have none. Maybe don't line up on Black Friday for the newest indulgence. Let's change Thanksgiving into something worth celebrating, where we give thanks by helping each other. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to go lay down.
Wow. You said it was all over the place, but I thought it was very it was very much a clear line all the way through and kind of full circle.
That's marvelous.
Fantastic job, as ever. I was just thinking earlier, I was like, I so love this format that we've decided to use because both of our like writing and delivery styles are different, but they're similar enough that it doesn't feel like a different show. But we also have different things. Like if you took a topic and I took the same topic, I don't know that we would come away with the same episode. Like I think you would focus on completely different things than I would focus on. That's what I love so much about this too, is not only are you a brilliant and amazing writer and researcher, but also like you pull things out that I probably wouldn't, and you go in directions that I might not have thought to go down. And I think that's so great. And I thought you crushed it. So thank you.
Thank you. I was thinking about that in the shower earlier. I was like, if Kate had this, I bet this would like be the coolest scientific paper you've ever read.
I don't know about that. I can already tell from the way you were thinking about that you were thinking about it while you were second guessing what you had done. And you were putting yourself down for what you came up with, which is not how to think about it. Fuck Kyle. Kyle is Larkin's inner critic. We've decided he's a very underqualified white man who does not, he walked into that job with not knowing what he's doing.
He's failed up.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. He never does.
Along with Pet. Fuck this guy.
Yeah, fuck Pet too. I mean, I know we see it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it's not like I'm surprised by people being capable of this kind of thing. I'm just like, what has to go on in your mind? What mental gymnastics do you have to perform to feel good about yourself when you do that kind of shit and to just like disconnect from it? And was no one around you like, hey, maybe this is a little fucked up? Because I don't believe that for a second.
I didn't include them because they, were anecdotes of good people.
That's not what we're here for.
That's not what we're here for. There was an anecdote of one of the federally placed investigator who was like, how are we supposed to be helping these children if the food plan doesn't change? She was very much like, this is absurd. What's actually, like, I go into the school and nothing has changed. What am I expected to do with that? And I actually have no power to do anything about that. And there are children that are not getting food. Like, this isn't making sense to me. The school marms and the principal I'm putting them out by even being here. So I can't even ask.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
We're not saying don't practice the giving thanks part, because that is really beautiful, even though it was appropriated. But I think the more privilege you have, maybe it is less giving thanks and maybe more of a privilege check. Maybe it's more of a, what do I have?
Oh, I like that.
That other people don't have. And how can I use that to help other people have more? Maybe that's the way to think about it right now.
Yeah, maybe. I know a lot of people in my community who are going to like Costco and Winco and other places and bulking up and then going to the food bank, dropping all that off. Maybe see if there's a local soup kitchen or a food drive near you. People are going hungry right now.
And rethink your concepts of like the quote unquote type of people who are on benefits that allow them to eat day to day, like SNAP benefits and food stamps, because I think there's a lot of, and forever there has been a lot of false narrative about what those people are and how they got to where they are. And it is truly there, but for the grace of God, go any of us, because I had clients who were homeless and who were on benefits who used to live in Beverly Hills in very nice houses. For one of them, it was like their spouse had ruined their credit. Their ex had still had access to their finances and ruined their credit. And then they also wound up having a health issue. And so they wound up in the hospital. And while they were in the hospital, their landlord wrongfully evicted them, but it stood because they were in the hospital, they weren't able to fight it. And so they got wrongfully evicted. Their credit was screwed. They could not rent anywhere else. And they wound up on Section 8 and food stamps. It happens, man.
Yeah. And even if it wasn't a fall, even if you are a houseless person who's on drugs or whatever, you deserve food.
Mental health issues and addiction are not moral failings. And so that's a great point, Larkin. Thank you, because that's also true. Even if it wasn't someone that you feel is, was virtuous or whatever, like, why does that mean that they should starve? Really? Why do you feel that way? Because that's something else to examine in yourself.
Food insecurity should not exist. Like, that's just, it's absurd and appalling.
Agreed. Somebody messaged me and was like, oh, apparently there are going to be like riots on the 4th because the people who aren't getting SNAP benefits are being told to like riot and rob people outside of Walmart. And this was like being reported through official channels in the government was how this person got this information. And I was like, that sounds to me like a government trying to force blame on the people who receive these benefits and be like, well, look, they don't deserve them anyway because they're all animals and they're all going to riot and they're all going to, they're all violent. How dare they be poor? They're obviously awful. And then they feel better about having withdrawn the benefits, because who did they withdraw them from? Terrible people, obviously.
Terrible people who aren't being paid a living wage and are single parents and can't afford childcare and Anyway, have a great holiday.
Anyway, yes. Happy Thanksgiving. From now it's ruined. And we'll be back to ruin more holidays for you in the month of December. We will also ruin Christmas and New Year's, so you're welcome. But next week will be an upcycled episode. As I said, it will be the Lindbergh baby bonus episode, which Larkin loves when I say. So shout out to our newest paid patron. Thank you so much, Alex Zilberman, for becoming a member of Gin and Tonics. I know Alex through work, and I was telling him about the podcast the other day and yesterday. And in the moment, he was like, I'm signing up right now. He did it with me on Zoom. Oh my gosh. So that was very nice. So thank you, Alex. We appreciate you. We hope you're enjoying what you've done to yourself with this podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for the support. And as ever, go follow us. Please rate and review us, and tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we will catch you on the next one.
See you on another time.
Latest on a Menjay.